Hi guys, thanks very much for tuning in to another live broadcast. I absolutely made a massive error with this one today because the rugby kicks off in 15 minutes and I really did want to see it. But it is only England-Italy. The Scotland game's later on this afternoon, so I'll be well finished by then. So, what we're going to talk about today is a bit of fly tying, but more importantly, about the deadly tactic that is the washing line. So I want to talk through how to set up the washing line and how to fish it effectively. So, but to get us warmed up, if you like, what I'm going to do is tie this fly that you see on the main screen, and it's a FAB. It's not the only floating pattern you can use for the washing line, but it's one that a lot of people prefer. So let's get started with a FAB. So I'm just going to stick in, this is a size 8 Hanak. Oh, that was not a good start. Let's see if that's still in focus. This is a size 8 Hanak 250 barbless hook. Now the size 8 does fit in the competition gauge, so if you're a comp angler and you want to fish these flies in competition, then please be assured that this will fit in the gauge. So the thread I'm going to be using is the Vivus GSP. This is at 30 denier, and as always with the Vivus and stuff, I'm just going to put my goggles on actually, and then get a little bit of super glue onto the shank of the hook. Then I can use my thread to spread it on the shank, then get a few turns just to get that into place, then remove my waste. Now for the back end of the FAB, now people will argue black and white. Some people say it's the foam arse blob, I call it the fat arse blob. It's up to you. Now basically the foam I'm going to be using is just a cylinder that I've cut. Again, if you don't know how I've done this, I'll stick a little link up there in the after recorded piece about how I get to this stage. And basically what I want to do is cut, not with them scissors, they're my good scissors, with an old set of scissors, cut the foam diagonally down the middle, like so. And then what you end up with is a piece of foam that looks like that. Now I always cut a little slit in the back of my foam, and I'm just going to do that off camera because what I want is it to splay out at the end of the fly, and this just helps keep it up in the water column, which is half of what the washing line technique's all about. And as we go on with the video, I'm going to show you how the leader's set up and how I like to fish it. Now I'm going to dress my booby cord up to the back end of the hook, and I'm just lightly pulling down on my GSP. If you pull too heavily on this, and I'll show you with the front, I don't usually bother, but if I pull too heavy on it, it just cuts it away, and then I can just simply remove that. I don't usually bother, I like to keep all the foam in, but as you progress with light turns, you'll eventually get a nice base that your chosen fritz is going to come down on. So that's the back end. Now some people just leave it whole like this, which is fine, it will still float, but if you cut it, it floats even higher in the water because there's more body placement for the water to hold up. I hope that makes sense. So the fritz I'm going to be using today is F&F jelly, and this is the standard biscuit, 15mm in length. And what I've done with this is I've just, before I came on camera actually, I've just soaked the fritz in water. I just find that it's much easier to work with, and I've removed the little waste end bits. I'm just going to catch that in. And run it up to the front of the hook. Now I'm not going to stop right on the eye, just slightly back. Then all I need to do is each turn use the thumb and forefinger of my left hand to sweep it back. It is one of the simplest flies going, and that's why I've chosen to tie it live. Even I will find this difficult to make a mess of. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it would be difficult. Okay, as I get up near the end, I can come in and just remove some of these fibres if I want, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna persist right to the eye. And this is the reason I'm using the GSP. I don't want a head on this fly really. So I'm just going to use 3 turns of the white GSP. I'm going to slip all the fibres back and 3 turns in front. Now that should be enough to hold it into place. And then I can come in and remove my fritz, put it to the side for the next fly. Another 3 turns. Then all I'm going to do is add a little bit of UV resin to my thread. And then I'm quickly going to whip finish that off. Now what that does is it virtually disappears with the fritz, and it looks like there's no head, and that's what I want for this particular fly. Some of them I like to have a head, but on this one I just like to have it as is. Now once the fritz dries, there you've got your fab, and you would fish that either on the point or on the top dropper, depending on what you're doing with your washing line. Right, let's have a look, take my goggles off, see who's in the house. Hi Blackfur, Scotland's going to win the day, I can feel it in my water. Hi Jane in the living room. Hi Chris, Dale. It's funny there's no Englishmen on, that's strange. Are they playing or something? Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the washing line. And so what I want to do is just chat through how I set up the washing line. So let's have a look. Let's hope my tech guy's got this bit right, and if he's not, I'll take myself out the back and kick me in the arse. So here we go, let's see if this works. Hey, it looks like it's working. So basically, how to make up a leader for the washing line. So first of all, you need a fly line. Now you can fish the washing line on any fly line, whether it be floating, intermediate or fast sink. It works just the same. Now I use 22 feet of fluorocarbon and I add 3 droppers. So the buoyant fly is obviously going to be on the point. Now I have 10 foot from the fly line to the first dropper, and there's a very good reason for that. And that reason, I'll just pause that slideshow for now. That reason is that if I'm fishing the washing line and I want to change fly lines, I'm able to change very quickly. So if I wind in my fly line, you can imagine I'm winding it in, I bring the tippet within my rod rings, very quickly, I'm fishing with a 10-foot rod, I've got the tippet at my fingers where my line's attached. So all I do is I change over my spools, my cassette spool, take my floater off, put in a DI5 or a DI7, and then attach my leader. Then I can pull my flies through and I'm immediately fishing again. Now there's a disadvantage to this, of course. If you need to be really high in the water, 10 foot is too much. So if I was fishing the washing line on a floating line, for example, I would cut that 10 foot down to 6 or even 5 foot depending, and that would keep my flies really high in the water. So let's just get the slideshow going again. So the droppers, as you see, I've got my dropper length between 6 and 12 inches. Now the advantages of having them at 12 inches is that you can change flies regularly. Now I'm using buzzers in this example, but washing line flies, you can You can hang whatever you like off them. Buzzers are good. Cormorants, crunchers, dial backs, they're all there. And as I say in the slide here, it really is a starting point. So if you're fishing from the bank and you haven't got much area to backcast, you might want to shorten that whole diagram down. So for example, instead of 10 foot to your first fly, maybe have 3 or 4 foot. But it is dependent on conditions, so, and what you want to achieve. So the washing line's a great method for searching through the water columns to find fish. And a way I really like to fish it, if the fish are high in the water, I like to fish it much shorter, so 5 to 6 feet to my first fly, then crunchers or dial backs, and then a fab or a booby on the point. And that really keeps it high in the water column, and that's where the fish are. The fish are looking up, and I'm just going to finish the slide now, I hope. Come on, tech guy, don't let me down. There we go. So I'm not going to tie this fly, but I just thought I'd show you in comparison to the fab. You can see that this booby is huge, and this is a JCB booby. And again, in the pre-recorded one, I'll stick a link up to this. I've done a tying video on it, but in relation to the fab, this is massive, and I see it more as a sacrificial fly rather than a fly that I'm out and out to catch fish. So that's the escalator booby. Let's just see if there's any questions so far. I hope you liked that diagram. I took great pains to get it to work. Hi Jim, I hope the weather's fine in Edinburgh. Dale, can you give the Scottish youth team a shout out as some are watching? Scottish youth team, make sure you bring back gold next time you're out. Hi Carl, my God, I thought you'd be well glued to the telly. I bet the headgear's making the tying much better for you. Hi Kerry, I'm glad you're up. Minus 70 wind chill. Well, you stay indoors, pal. I don't want you catching a cold. It wasn't PowerPoint, Chris, actually. It was Keynote, which is new to me, so it was a bit of a struggle. The visor headgear, John, I've done a video on that headgear actually, and I'll stick a link when I do the pre-recorded version up in the bar for you. Do you ever get more than one fish at a time? Kimberly, I do get more than one fish at a time. It doesn't happen all the time, but early season it can be quite prominent when there's big shoals of fish fishing round. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I'm fishing with barbless hooks, you very rarely land 2 fish. Because what happens is one fish has got the line tight if it's taking the top dropper generally, while the other one's just swimming around, and very often they'll spit a barbless hook, so you only land 1. But when you're fishing with barbed hooks, you very often can land 2 fish, depending on their condition obviously. If you get 2 good conditioned fish, they're going to snap your tippet up very quickly. Thanks very much Blackford, I'm glad the diagram was clear. Hi Deck, how's things? God, it must be cold up on Skye. You still got plenty of snow down on the ground, no doubt. Perfect. Okay, right, let's talk about another fly for the washing line then. So as I say, it can be fished on various lines, and I think traditionally it's fished quite high up in the water. Now, to fish flies high up in the water like that, you really don't want to be fishing buzzers. So the buzzers have their place, and I like to fish these on a midge tip or an intermediate. But you know, as you can see, this is a varnished up buzzer, and what that does is it will drag your flies down regardless of what you've got on the point. Even that big JCB booby that I showed you, the buzzers will eventually drag that down. So what we do is we fish lighter flies such as this cruncher. So I'm going to show you how I've tied this, and let's make a start then. So again, I'm using barbless hook, and the one I've put in the vise, if I can find the box, is a Hanak H270 barbless hook. This one's at size 10. Now, if you're old school, you're probably thinking, what size is that? Well, Camazan B175, this would be equivalent to a size 12. I'll just get my binoculars back on. I know I look a bit stupid with these, but the fly would look a lot stupider without them. So, let's get this on. And the thread I'm going to be using for this is the Simplify Nano Silk, and it's black. Now, it's at 12/0, so it's very thin, but very strong. So I'm just going to get a little bit of super glue onto the shank and get a few wraps down. I'm going to bring it in line with a pronounced bump on this hook. Would be where a barb would be on a normal barbed hook, and then just take away my waste. Now, for the tailing fibres on this, I'm going to be using this old cock cape here, and as you can see, it's a bit threadbare, but it's only for tailing. So I've already got a feather out somewhere that I've been working with, and I'm going to take a good 8 to a dozen fibres. Want a nice tail. I'm going to line it up, and it needs to be about the same length as the shank of the hook. Then once I've got that in place, I can lock it down. Now, I'm not going to take away all my waste because I want to keep my body nice and even, but I do want this bit at the front gone. Then I can bring that around like so. Now, the wire I'm using for my rib is some silver wire. This is from Fish On. It's nice and thin, it's 0.14 millimeters, and I'm going to catch that in on my side the entire length of the shank. Keeps the body nice and even, like so. Okay, so far so good. Next then, I've got some dyed black cock pheasant, and I'm going to take a few fibres from the bottom. I think there's 3 or 4 in here that I've managed to catch, and I'm going to catch them in at the tip. All looking pretty decent so far. Now, I'm going to be using my new toy. I don't know if you've seen it. This was kindly sent to me from Canada by a guy. Well, it didn't come from Canada actually, but it was bought by a guy that's in Canada. So Kerry Pitt, thanks for the kind gift. I'm going to put it to good use today. And these are Cortarelli hackle pliers. They're supposed to be very good, and you can adjust these tension wise. Now, when I first got them, I looked at them and thought, oh, they look a bit heavy. If I drop my hackle pliers, will they not just snap whatever it is I'm trying to hackle? But actually, well, that's gone wrong, isn't it? Yeah, them Cortarelli hackle pliers, rubbish. Okay, let's go back. It's not a complete disaster yet. And I'll try again. See, it doesn't always go right, especially when you're live. Let's try and find some more stable looking. There we go. These look a bit better. I've only got a couple of fibres here, and let's give them a second go. Let's give them a second go. think actually the fibres on the pheasant tail were already pretty brittle at the area I was, and it just couldn't take the pressure. I just see it starting to spin up actually. This is what comes of not tying the way you normally tie. Normally I would just use the rotary function on the vise, and I would just hold the hackle pliers in place while spinning it. And the reason I'm not doing that is last week when I did this, the flies seem to have gone out of focus for a few people. So I've decided to just keep the vise where it is today and work a bit cack-handed, if you like. So I've just locked that pheasant tail into place, and then I can come in and remove the waste. Not particularly happy with that, if I'm honest. Right, so the wire, I'm going to put that away from me, sorry. So the opposite direction that the cock hackle went round. Then at the top here, I'm just going to catch that in 2 or 3 turns, and then 2 or 3 turns in front. So this is a great fly if you want to, you know, fish at different depths. This will stay in that sort of higher water column. If you want to fish, you can even mix it up. So something like the cruncher on the top dropper, a dial back in behind it maybe, and a buzzer on the point quite near the booby. What am I looking for now? Is some red holographic. Excuse me. I've been drinking ginger beer, so I've got a bit of burps going on. And then I'm going to catch that in. Now I don't want very much of this showing, just enough as to give it a hint of colour. So I've still got about 3 turns of my silver wire rib, and I'm just building up a little red hot spot there in behind. Content that that's in place, and then I can come in and remove the waste. Okay, so considering the rough start, I've recovered and it's starting to go bad again. Right, next, what do I need next? My thorax material, and what I've got is some UTC tinsel medium, and this is the ice blue, and I've already got a little bit of that pulled off somewhere, and I'm going to catch that in. And I'm going to bring it back so that only a little bit of the red is remaining. Now this is a good tip for this. So I want to build up a little bump at the front to create a thorax. Now the trouble with the UTC is it tends to be quite slidey on the thread. So just a spot of super glue onto your thread, and then I can then build up the thorax, knowing that it's not going to slide all over the place. And I don't know if you can hear the banging at the background, but my dog is desperate to get in here and see what's going on. There's nobody in the living room with him. And then once I've caught that in, I can remove that part. So you can see it's starting to build up quite nicely. Right, let's see what folks are saying. Hackle pliers are too big. Yeah, I think you're right, Starsky. They are a bit big. The washing line's not just used for loch style fishing, it can be used from the bank. You know, you can imagine if you've got your team of flies and a buoyant fly on the end and you're fishing on an intermediate line, if you're at a bank, you're fishing through that water column, and it can be very effective. I use the Timecodes one, it's one of my favourite hackle pliers, Starsky, but I just thought as Kerry was kind enough to send me a set, I'd give it a go. The cruncher's coming on. Wait till you see the end of it, Robert. How much whiskey is in the ginger beer? I wouldn't sully my whiskey with ginger beer, Tom, for goodness sake. Okay. Italy's beating England 5-3. Oh, that's a shame. Poor England. Okay, hackle. Now for the hackle, all my crunchers I try and use hen capes. And the reason I use the hen capes is because you get a lot more movement out of a hen cape than you do a cock hackle. Cock hackles generally are used for dry flies. Hen capes are much more suited to wets. So as you can see, I've already picked out a feather and I've got a little bit of the stalk just showing there. There's a little bit of fluff on it I'm just going to remove. And before I try and come in and catch that stalk in, I'm going to just catch on a little bit of wax onto my silk, and then I can come over 2 or 3 turns and catch in there. Now the other way of doing it, obviously, a lot of purists actually would think catch it in at the tip, but for crunchers I like to catch it in at the stalk. And I'm not going to risk the other hackle pliers. I'm going to grab my trusted C&F ones and then bring it around. Now with crunchers, people will say, oh, they've got to be very short hackles, they've got to be sparse, they've got to be this, they've got to be that. I'm a great believer in you have them whatever way you like, and 2 turns usually does me. I'll come up through that hackling, just hold it into place. Then I can remove the hackle pliers, lick the thumb and forefinger, slick everything back out the way, and then build up a nice head. Now once that's in position, you can grab your waste bit of hackle and just pull it away. It's going nowhere once you've trapped it in with a head like that. Then to finish the fly off, I like to just add, again, a little bit of UV resin. And then I can come in with a whip finish tool. And finish it off. Now, with this nano silk, and it's the same with the Vivus and the fish on, you're always best cutting it. Don't try and pull it away. You'll either cut into your fingers or you'll wreck your fly. Now as a fishing fly, I would just put this in my box as is. Really happy with that. It's a great wee cruncher, but as I'm going to be photographing it later, I'll probably put it to the side, give it another coat of varnish so it looks nice for the camera. But there we go, that's a wee cruncher that's ideal for the washing line. If you haven't got black pheasant tail, the exact same pattern with natural pheasant tail works really well. So let's take that out the vise and have a look at the comments. Forza Azzurri, I take it that's Italian for come on Italy. Have you ever used line rings for tying the washing line? I haven't, and the reason for that, Mark, is because I've mostly fished in competitions, and you're not allowed to use tippet rings to form your leader. It's got to be a knotted leader system. So no, I haven't really used the little rings. Just worked out how to stream on the TV. Impressive. I've fished the washing line many times from the bank, and when the fish are cruising high in the water, the takes can be vicious. Often see the bow wave before the take. Yep, that's true, Nigel. I've fished the washing line from the bank, and it's a great method of covering quite a lot of water where you're allowed to permitted to fish more than one fly. Yep, red heads on the flies work really well. I like damsels with red heads and stuff, but it's good. Okay, so let's have a look at another favourite for the washing line, and it's an old pattern, many variations of it. I'll just stick it in the vise for you to have a look at. And so this is what's called a Diawl Bach, and it's a Welsh word for little devil, I think, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, some Welshmen will be along to correct me in my pronunciation. Deck, I'm using Solaris Bone Dry. It comes with a little brush in the top lid. It's a really good resin, I like it. Unfortunately I'm running out, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to get a hold of, but at the moment I've still got plenty, so I'm just doing away. So the Diawl Bach, it's a simple fly, but it's also very light, so if you're fishing high in the water column, a Diawl Bach's obviously going to be suited to that. So let's get another hook in the vise. It's a simple fly to tie. Again, I've kept it simple. And again, I've been using the Hanak H270. It's size 10, which is more akin to 12. Now, I know it might seem negligible, but hook size matters. So a bigger hook's going to sink faster because it's heavier, it's carrying a bit more iron. Now, as well as hooks, believe it or not, the tippet you're using for your washing line can make a difference. So for example, if I'm using 12.5 pound fluorocarbon and the guy next to me is using 6 pound fluorocarbon, guess whose flies are going to get down a lot quicker? It's the guy with the 12 pound fluorocarbon, because it sinks a little bit quicker in the water. And I know it may well sound like tiny little margins, but you know, tiny margins make a big difference when you're competition fishing. So that's, you've got to take all that into consideration. Tippet diameter, sink rate over how strong the fish are. So if you, the more I try and get as thin a tippet as possible for the species I'm fishing for. I hope that makes sense. I've probably not explained it very well, but even flies like this, if you're fishing 12 pound fluorocarbon and 3 buzzers like that, it is going to get down real quick. Anyway, back to the fly. Sorry, I've digressed. Now the thread I'm going to be using for this one is the Vivus, and it's at 8.0. It's the E04 and the thread's red. First thing I'm going to do is get a little bit of wax on. Yeah, they're not the most exciting pattern to tie, Chris, but my goodness, they are effective. Has anyone got a wee update on the rugby score for me? Okay, let's get the binos back on. And I'm going to catch in just behind the eye. And I'll take it up to where the pronounced bump is on the 270. Come in with my scissors and remove my waste. Again, for the tailing of this fly, I'm simply using an old cock cape, and I've got a feather that I've been working with here. So I'll just pull that out. and I've got about a dozen fibres, and I've just pulled that out to the side. If you pull out at a 90-degree angle, actually it marries up the tips quite nicely. Again, I want approximately the length of the shank. And again, I want not to take off everything, but just remove some of that waste at the front there. Now, while I'm going up, I'm going to add in my ribbing. And what am I using for the ribbing? Now, mostly you can use silver wire, gold wire, whatever you like really, but I'm going to use some of this stuff. This is from Troutline, and it's UV ribbing fibre. So it's light pink, and when it's on the fly, 8-8, very good. Sounds like I'm missing a good game actually. Okay, I'm going to dress this up. I'm going to catch it in the entire length of the body. So I've cut my ribbon at the back in open turns. I'm going to bring my thread back down. I don't really want to add much more bulk to that body. Now, next then, I'm going to use some peacock herring. Now, they come on strung packages like this. You can buy them, you know, this will last me a lifetime. Well, a couple of months anyway. And I've picked out 2 fibres from that. And all I'm going to do is marry up the ends. And then tie them in. I'm going to pause a couple of millimetres short of the eye of the hook. Then I'm going to bring my peacock herring to the base of the fly and start wrapping up. Again, if you get the first couple of turns right, the rest really does just fall into place. It's easy. I'm going to stop there, bring my thread over the top of the herring. It's not the strongest material in the world, so you definitely either need to put some super glue down on the shank or rib it, as I'm doing on this occasion. So once you've got that into place, you can take your rib, and what this does actually, if I pull tight enough on it, it flattens out and makes a really nice rib. It's a great wee fly, the Diawl Bach. I know it looks like nothing at all, but it does some damage when it comes to catching fish, that's for sure. So I've just trapped in the head, and I'm going to snip away my waist. Put that to the side. Now the Diawl Bach has a little beard, and again I'm going to come back to my cock strand here, and I'm going to take about the same as what I took for the tail and catch that in. So the points are all married up, and I want it the length of the body of the fly, not the length of the shank, length of the body of the fly. So I can pull that up with my thumb and forefinger of my left hand, get a couple of loose turns, and you can just manipulate the beard where you want it to go. So that's sitting quite nice for me now. Get a couple of good clamps down on it, and I'm going to bring my thread right to the back of my head. Then I can come in with my scissors and simply remove the waist. Okay, that's looking good. Now it's at this point you can decide whether you want to add jungle cock eyes. I've got a jungle cock cape here. I'm not going to add the eyes today. I have them with and without, but I think when I'm using the UV ribbon fibres, that's enough bling for one fly. So I just use one or two other. So I only put jungle cock eyes on really when I've only used silver wire or gold wire on them. So I built a nice little head there. Again, I'm going to come in with the whip finish tool. Build a nice big red head. Does give it a sort of aiming spot. Now I do both, so I like red for my dial back heads, but I also like them just black, just plain black. It's a lot to be said for just drab. Sometimes that's just what the fish want. And to finish the fly off, I can then come in with my little brush from my resin. I mean, a lot of the resins don't have this little applicator brush, and the best bet is a needle, to be honest, but the brush is excellent for. I was a little surprised actually, because this morning I know that my UV pen's on its way out, and it's not the batteries, it's just been battered, and I've got another one on the way. So and I might say thank you to Joe Monroe, who had a spare and is kindly going to send me it, as I don't think mine's just going to last any more than another couple of days. But there's a little dial back, and it's a great wee pattern, and as I think Nigel said, oh, that they're a bit boring, but yeah, I've got to agree, they're a bit boring, but they are quick to tie and they're absolutely lethal. So why wouldn't you? Right, let's have a look. I get my hooks from Unique Flies, Colm, and they're based in the UK, but they're the distributors for the Hanak Hook Company, and I don't just use Hanak hooks, but I do use them a lot. They're just great quality. The headset, a lot of people comment on this. I have done a video on it. If you search up my channel, I remember when I got these, and I got them from Amazon. I think they were like $19.99, but if you have a wee look on the channel and look up better fly tying, you'll see that I've done a little review on the headset and where you can get them and stuff. That's a good question, Starsky. Black hooks, nickel, gold, doesn't matter. I know some guys that tie buzzers that swear by gold hooks. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference. You know, I think, in fact, I'm going to be perfectly honest now, I don't think fly patterns make a great deal of difference. And I've done a video that I'm going to release in a few weeks about 5 tips on how to become a better fly tyer, and I think my opening gambit for the whole video is fly tying is a different hobby from fly fishing, and you shouldn't get the two confused. As long as I'm confident with the pattern I'm fishing, I'm going to go and catch fish, and whether it's on a bronze hook, black hook, I don't think it really makes a huge amount of difference. I think once you've got your presentation, your depth and speed of retrieve right, the fish would eat a boot tied to a hook. You know, it doesn't matter. It's getting the presentation, depth, speed of retrieve. So no, the short answer is I don't think it makes a blind bit of difference. Organza ribbon for tying dial backs. You know, Mark, I did a video recently, and I think it was a damsel sort of pattern. Now, it wasn't organza, it was the stuff you actually buy for fly tying, which is ridiculously expensive, but apparently organza is much cheaper. I don't have any, and I'm not a big fan, if I'm perfectly honest. I remember about 10 years ago when it was sort of very popular, and I'm getting some and thinking, ugh, not really. I just prefer, you know, old school peacock herring. It's simple and it's effective. is the dial back a suggestive pattern, or does it represent a specific insect in the UK? Thomas, no, I think it is a suggestive pattern. It can mimic many different sort of creatures that swim in the water, and it just looks like a food item. That's why it's so effective. I think it's best fished very slowly, but other than that, that's what it is. Hi Jeff. Thanks very much. Don't worry, the video will be out tomorrow morning. You'll be able to see it tomorrow in its glory, all its glory. 1380 England. Is that Italy starting to cave in? Ah, well. Yep, Kerry, I mean, why would you... I mean, as I said earlier there, fly tying's not the same hobby as fishing. My fishing, in fact, I would be ashamed to show you some of my fly boxes, because the stuff that's in them, you just go, you fish with them, really? But you don't need to have a fancy elaborate fly box for going fishing. You need to have a fancy elaborate fly box for showing off to your pals. Love the crunchers. Do them with small pearly heads and white ones for thorax. Adds a bit of weight to them if you want to get a bit deeper. Yeah, Neil, I have got some sort of cruncher style flies that are they're more tied like these varnished buzzers. And what I do, similar sort of thing, the thorax is less pronounced, and I just stick a hackle and a tail on it, and then that gets down real quick. I'm looking forward to the second half actually. It looks like it's been a decent game. Yep, Kerry, I can't reiterate that enough. You know, people go on about the fly pattern, and you know, it's got to be specific lengths, and that's fly tying, it's not fly fishing. But you know, folk get mixed up with that, and the only time I ever sort of got into doing that was when I'm trying to get into somebody's headspace in a competition, and it can be quite a useful tool when you get in the boat with somebody and you show them a fly and say, oh yeah, the fish definitely must have number 27 pink, and it's got to have 3 strands of glister material coming out from the abdomen. It's just a complete nonsense. But if you tell someone that in the boat, and then you catch a couple of fish because your presentation, your depth and your retrieve speed were correct, they soon get it into their head that it's the fly you're fishing. Of course, that's a nonsense. It's not the fly you're fishing, it's how you're fishing it. Elliot, I've never actually gone out purposely to fish for sea trout, but I have caught a few while I've been out for winter grayling. They're great fish, very strong, and they don't give you a fright when you're fishing a Euro nymph on a £1.5 tippet. Yep, yeah, 20 quid. It's a great thing, Jim. I mean, I have got a big magnifier that I use for other things, but the headset's grand. I mean, the only thing I would say is with a headset, and I'll see if I can show you. So what I've done is it's a plastic thing that goes round your head, and I've just sewed in a bit of old shirt to stop sweating on the plastic. But other than that, it's great. Really good bit of kit. Your top 5 flies for reservoir fishing. Mark, that's easy. A candy floss booby, an orange blob, a tequila blob, a Viva booby, and a cruncher. That would be it. I'd like to tag in buzzers, but you know, you don't need a lot of flies. I'd happily go on any reservoir and be fairly confident of catching a few fish just with them 5 flies. Tyers need to realise most flies are tied to catch people. Fish will eat most anything. You're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, when I used to take fish, so I don't take a lot of fish anymore. I'm a big believer in catch and release. But when I used to take fish for my neighbours, and I'd take them home and I'd clean them, because obviously the neighbours aren't keen on the gutting part, and they'd be full of fagged outs, cigarette papers. It was just amazing how much rubbish was inside a trout's stomach. They'll eat anything. Colm, are you a fan of a squirmy, just tied up a few, looking forward to giving them a go. Colm, I really like them for winter grayling. For trout fishing, I've got them in my box. It's like the mop fly. I've no doubt that it's super effective and catches lots of fish, but I can't bring myself to tie it on, if I'm perfectly honest. But the squirmy for grayling fishing, it's hard to beat, hard to beat. Headset was $22.95 with a case, cloth and cleaner. Alright, you've done well there, Kerry. I suppose that's about 20 quid in UK money. Well, Kerry, I'd love to do a booby fishing video, and the time to do that is sort of April and early season. It works particularly well. If you caught the video last week about fishing that particular tactic, and I will stick a little link up in the information bar there. I don't think there's a better way of fishing. Some boys will argue that the single booby will outfish that all day, but I wouldn't mind sitting at the other end of a boat and proving them wrong. The Fario hooks. I haven't tried the Fario hooks, Jake, but a lot of my friends that tie use the Fario hooks and speak very highly of them. They're very strong, very sharp. Your wife's watching the B&B programme, 4 in a Bed. Your luck's in there, Nigel, I think. About £15, Kerry. That's not bad. Yeah, that's good value. Alright, Jim, it's not always about the fly, it's about the ability of the boy holding the rod. I'm a big believer in that. Right, fellas, I think I'm going to shoot away. If there's no more questions, I might catch the second half of the rugby. So, anything else before I go, folks? Okie doke, I'm going to call it a day, and thanks very much for tuning in. And I'll see you all next time.